Jeanne d'Arc had low growth, about 157 centimeters. She had short dark hair with bangs. The eyes were described as large, dark, and expressive, and the skin was tanned from frequent stay in the sun. According to the memories of the associates of the Orleans Virgin, once she spent 6 days in the saddle, in armor, which was hard even to young knights. The brushes of her hands were small, which surprised contemporaries. It was believed that this happens only in aristocrats. The name Jeanne d'Arc is familiar with everything. However, if you called the national heroine of France in a personal conversation, she would not understand who you are addressing. D'Arc means from the Ark, but Jeanne was born and grew up in the village of Domremy. From the Arch was her father, Jacques. During the interrogation of the British, Jeanne generally stated that she did not know her last name. In preserved documents, she signed just Jeanne. This word and cross is the only thing she could write. In a conversation, the heroine called herself Girl Jeanne. Traditionally, Jeanne d'Arc is represented by a simple, poor peasant girl. But this is not so. Her father, Jacques, was the foreman of the village. He possessed his own estate and 20 acres of the earth, meadows, and even forest. Around the age of 13, Jeanne began to hear the voices of the Archangel Michael, Saint Catherine, and the great martyr Margarita. They repeated that it was she who was destined to expel English invaders from France. Modern neurologists believe that Jeanne had epilepsy with auditory disorder and causes auditory hallucinations. She mentioned that the voices of the saints sounded most clearly when she heard a bell ringing, and loud sounds are a trigger for such a disorder. Jeanne is often depicted galloping ahead of the French army and personally leading soldiers to the attack. But this is not so. Jeanne did not take part in the fighting, limiting herself to the role of the symbol for French soldiers and reminding them that God is with them. During the interrogation of the British, she said the following: "When I went against my enemies, I only carried a banner, and I didn't kill anyone." Some knights claimed that this girl was better than the most experienced commander in the lead and construction of the armies, but historians believe that these noble French chevaliers simply exaggerated slightly. After all, the fighting spirit will clearly be higher if the saint gives orders, whose lips say the words by God. Although Jeanne did not take part in the hostilities, she had 2 swords. Jeanne received her first sword in the chapel of St. Catherine. This relic was supposed to inspire the swearing knights. For example, when the Orleans Virgin discovered that her warriors brought 2 drunken prostitutes to the camp, she beat them with a sword flat so strongly that the blade has broken. This caused discontent, even King Carl, who noticed that for this should be used a stick. After Jeanne, they gave the sword of the Burgundian, captured in the battle. It was mentioned that she had a rather hot-tempered character and screamed at the knights who faded, played gambling, missing the mass, and drunk. In addition, she generously handed out the slants of the Scottish soldiers who had stolen food from the convoy, who had stolen to the army, and reported the French for insufficient zeal during the battles. Jeanne commanded the French troops not for long, a little over a year. During the liberation of the city of Compiers besieged by Burgundians, she was captured, and for 10,000 gold livres were sold to the British. Those began to decide how to get rid of it. As a result, they decided to transfer her inquisitions to the court of Cauchon, Bishop Beau. This villain quickly and concocted accusations. It is believed that Jeanne was burned for witchcraft, but in fact, the claims of English justice to the Orleans Virgin were slightly different. In the beginning, 70 charges were put forward, including the use of black magic. Then the list was reduced to 12. They refused the witchcraft, but accused of heresy. Based on the fact that the saints in her head spoke in French, it was believed that they explained exclusively in Latin. So, Jeanne is a heretic. Besides, she broke the divine law, wearing men's clothes and cutting her hair shortly. She probably did this for two reasons. Firstly, for the convenience of traveling, and secondly, in order not to seduce with their appearance hungry in campaigns in women of French warriors. In addition, Jeanne broke the covenant about the veneration of her parents, leaving the father's house without their permission. And finally, the maiden tried to escape, jumping out of the window of the Beaurevoir Tower, in which she was judged. This reckless act was recognized as an attempt by suicide, a terrible sin, contrary to the Lord. Naturally, Jeanne would not agree with all the accusations, so they were not voiced. She was promised, if she repents and apologizes to the Holy Church, she will be forgiven and have mercy. Then Jeanne was given to sign this document, replacing it with recognition of all the points of the prosecution, and the illiterate Virgo slapped across there. Based on this, Jeanne was sentenced to burn and immediately executed a court decision. This happened on May 30th, 1431.